so you're going to have to make a decision here. I'll give you about a minute.
This is the longest hand in main event history.
Sean Deeb and I disagree on so many things constantly. So I watched this little video of him and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to totally disagree with his take. And everything he said was exactly on point. There's no question that more time helps professional players, which means it hurts Rex by definition.
For more than half a century, the WSOP main event has been defined by its slow, deliberate deep stack structure, giving players ample time on each street to think through decisions that might be worth millions of dollars. In recent years, however, tanking has become a recurring flashpoint.
We literally do this every time we're playing. Doesn't matter what the stake. You know, it's just obnoxious. This is what we do for a living, like learn how to operate.
Live stream audiences have repeatedly complained that multi-minute tanks make poker hard to watch, while insiders worry that deliberate stalling around pay jumps creates unfair edges that have little to do with actual skill. The tipping point came late on day 6 of the main event when an incident involving Loren Klein illustrated just how extreme tanking could become. Klein, sitting on essentially a single chip behind, tanked for around 15 minutes, clearly hoping to ladder up and lock in a better payout if another player busted first. The hand eventually forced the floor to intervene, but the damage to the day's flow and to public perception was already done. The tank was widely criticized on social media because everyone else in the tournament was affected, while those physically present at the table had an incentive to allow the stall because they too were chasing the same pay jump. In response to this incident, WSOP officials made a dramatic decision overnight. Starting with day 7, the WSOP main event would be played under a shot clock system, despite having run the first 6 days under traditional untimed rules. Under the new system, pre-flop actions had to be taken within 20 seconds, post-flop within 30, unless the player physically used one of their time bank cards, each worth an extra 30 seconds. 6 such cards meant that a player could take up to 3 minutes of extra time across their biggest decisions, but if they burned through those time banks early, they were effectively locked into rapid-fire play for the rest of the day. Seeing that power used this late in poker's most prestigious event was shocking for many players. For a viewer's perspective, the difference was immediately noticeable. Hands folded more quickly, tanks largely disappeared, and pacing became closer to what audiences see in shot clock high rollers and other modern TV events. From a player's perspective, however, the adjustment was more complex. Pros who regularly play on WPT or Triton events were comfortable with counting down their decisions and budgeting their time banks, but many recreational players in the main event had never played a shot clock tournament in their lives. High-stakes pro Chris Brewer, a seasoned shot clock player, slammed the decision as completely awful and insanely unfair, arguing that changing the rules at this stage of the main event gave huge expected value to players already familiar with shot clock formats. He compared it to a classical chess championship match being turned into blitz. He said that if Martin Cabral or Will Kassouf were still in the main event, then the WSOP would not have introduced a shot clock. David Williams also criticized the change, saying that floor should simply use discretion in egregious spots like Loren Klein's tank rather than imposing a blanket clock on everyone. However, not all pros were against the clock. According to Sean Deeb, he saw the change as a necessary evil to prevent the kind of unfairness created by excessive tanking.
It's so unfair. The other 7 tables, that table's playing no hands. We might have played 7 hands at the featured table in that time period. I think it's a necessary evil at this stage of the tournament because people were too abusive on time. We don't want to go hand for hand or round for round. And so this is the best solution to the problem at hand. Very few recreationals tank. It is way more the pros tank than recreational. So I think, if anything, this is better for the recreationals because the pros can't sit there for 7 minutes every turn and figure out, do I 1.5x pot or do I, hero call this guy? I actually think shot clocks are better for recs.
Daniel Negreanu also agreed to what Sean Deeb said, and contrary to many, he thinks that shot clocks are going to help the recreationals.
It sucks that shot clocks are needed, but here's the thing. Who's more likely to stall? Professional poker players who understand the value of pay jumps and stealing equity from other players. So a shot clock hurts the pros in that case, which by definition would help these recreational players we pretend to care so much about when really it's just an excuse. Imagine infinite time. Who's more likely to come to the correct decision? The player who's played with solvers and has all the time to count the combos or whatever, or Idaho Joe, who's, I don't know if he's got it or not. You think those extra 7 minutes are going to help Idaho Joe? There's no question that more time helps professional players, which means it hurts Rex by definition. Now the table feels like, hey, let's do this guy a solid, let's be nice and help him out. Yeah, but what you're not realizing is you're directly helping him and screwing someone else. Because if someone else goes broke while you're sitting there and he doesn't know, that $20,000 pay jump that should have been that guy's, you helped this guy steal it from him and take it himself, right? And so everyone at the table is typically incentivized because if there's no hands being played, everyone gets a 20K pay jump.
Another layer that many observers pointed to was broadcast pressure. ESPN had returned to covering the main event to show the delayed final table action in early August. Long silent tanks are notoriously difficult television, especially for viewers who are newer to poker or who tune in expecting action comparable to other sports broadcasts. Some speculation suggested that the decision to enforce shot clocks was influenced by the need to keep broadcasts tighter and more watchable. With ESPN already having run pieces on cheating and angle shooting in prior WSOP controversies, there was a sense that the series could ill afford another black eye in the form of endless slow play during its marquee event. Even if officials framed the change as a response to Klein's tank, the broader media environment clearly favored a faster, more TV-friendly main event. Beyond pace of play, many pros and serious fans fixated on the principle of changing rules mid-event. The WSOP did have explicit rulebook language reserving the right to implement an event-wide shot clock at any point, but actually exercising the power when only 62 players remained felt to critics like moving the goalpost after the game had begun. Some pros started to mock the WSOP by suggesting ideas for new rule changes that could further be introduced in the main event. I think the WSOP main event should get a surprise new rule every day. Play day 8 with a Mississippi straddle. Announce on day 8 that 13th place cashes for $0 now. Tag team on day 6, split back up 50-50 for day 7. Next year, make WSOP main event have no pay jumps so people don't stall, aka winner take all. The bubble is when it's heads up. Supporters countered that the rulebook flexibility existed precisely to deal with extreme situations. The Klein incident demonstrated that the current mechanisms, which are calling the clock and floor intervention, were insufficient to prevent play from grinding to a halt. They argued that tournament organizers have a duty not only to the remaining players, but also to the thousands who had already busted and the millions watching, and that if abuse reaches a tipping point, structural tools like shot clocks must be available. Nonetheless, the optics of introducing such a change so late in the main event are likely to haunt WSOP policy discussions for years. In the wake of Day 7 shot clock implementation, much of the debate shifted from whether tanking was a problem to what alternative solutions might have been preferable. One suggestion was greater dealer discretion. Dealers and floor staff could be empowered to step in more aggressively when a hand drags on unreasonably, calling the clock faster or imposing penalties in egregious cases. That approach, however, runs into the problem of consistency. One dealer's idea of excessive might be very different from another's, and having subjective judgments decide who gets punished in the biggest tournament in poker could be seen as unfair and chaotic. Another proposed fix was stronger self-policing by players. Existing rules already allow any player in the tournament to call the clock on someone, yet there is a stigma attached to calling the clock. Many players view it as poor etiquette unless the delay is truly outrageous, and in pay jump spots, everyone at the table often benefits from the stall, which discourages the action. A more radical alternative embraced by some top pros is the chess-style clock, a method already tested in high-level events like the Triton Poker Series. Under a chess-style system, each player gets a single time bank for the entire day instead of a fixed amount of time for each decision. They can spend that time however they wish. They can tank deeply in critical spots while moving quickly through routine hands. Daniel Negreanu has described this concept as an innovative game changer for poker, praising the way it removes the need to police individual tanks while still punishing habitual stalling. Phil Hellmuth, who generally plays quickly, has welcomed the idea, noting there are rare situations where players legitimately need extra time to fully evaluate complex decisions. However, this system is currently more familiar to elite pros than to wider player pool, and implementing it in a massive mixed experience field like the WSOP Main Event would require extensive education and careful rollout and not a sudden change overnight. What this controversy made clear is that tanking is no longer a niche complaint. It has become central to how players and viewers experience the WSOP. Shot clocks are now firmly on the table as one of the most important tools for shaping the future of tournament poker, and the way the WSOP chooses to use them will help define the next era of the main event.